Welcome to What Really Matters podcast, Everyday Spirituality with Karen Wyatt. And I am back. If you've been a listener of this podcast in the past, you know that I've been gone for about a year and a half now. I took a long hiatus. I actually didn't know if I ever would be able to come back, but I'm here, and it is my intention to get this podcast going again, and I'm excited about it and looking forward to it. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit in this first episode about where I've been and what's been going on, because there's been a big gap in time. A lot has happened for me in my life, and you might find it interesting. So I'm just going to cover that really briefly as we get started here. And after this episode, I'll be moving back into the type of spiritual content that I normally share. So around a year and a half ago, when I quit doing this podcast, I was dealing with a lot of physical exhaustion and fatigue and some emotional exhaustion as well. I had just done a 10-part series on the podcast about this trip to Italy that we took a number of years ago that turned out to be a grief pilgrimage. And that was a really powerful experience for me, going back through that trip and rereading my notes. So I was feeling a lot of emotional exhaustion after doing that, and I just knew that I needed a break, but I didn't realize that I was actually very sick, and I just didn't know. I honestly had been ignoring physical symptoms for quite a long time. I wasn't paying attention to my own body and what was happening. So I didn't really recognize it very quickly until I suddenly went into atrial fibrillation. And this happened when I went back to our home in Colorado up in the high mountains, because I may have explained on my other podcast, we have had two homes. One, our regular home up in the very high mountains in Colorado, and then a condo at sea level in California near where our children live. And for a number of years, I've been going back and forth between those two locations. So it was last year in February, I went back up to the mountains and suddenly went into atrial fibrillation, and I ended up having to leave the mountains and get back to sea level. But the arrhythmia never improved and never went away. And so at that time, I started doing my own work, because here's the kind of person I am as a doctor myself. I'm very resistant to getting medical attention and medical workups. I like to figure out my own puzzles. Part of the reason for that is that I'm a very holistic thinker, and our medical system is really not holistic. And so particularly where the heart is concerned, I knew if I show up with any kind of heart problem, all the focus will be only on the heart. But I understood this to be a total person issue that affected my heart and my body, but also my mind, my emotions, and my soul. And so I really wanted to do my own investigation and my own work before I dove too deeply into the medicine. And I did make sure that I was safe. I wasn't taking risks by not getting a workup right away. And I just needed more information and more time. So at that time, I started my own little program. I decided that my heart is a messenger. Like literally, the heart is a second brain. It has its own well-developed nervous system. And so I felt my heart is communicating with me and I need to listen. And I also recognized I have never listened to my body. I have just always taken good health for granted and assumed, hey, I'm really strong, I'm super healthy, and I have never really listened to what my body tells me. So I started focusing on the heart and really listening. Now, in this process, I will tell you, I did end up going in for an evaluation where we actually found more problems than just the atrial fibrillation. And so maybe I'll tell you about that first, because I learned that I have an enlarged right atrium, I have a leaky valve in my heart, and I have congestive heart failure. which is the name, unfortunately, that is applied to this condition that I don't agree with. I don't like the name at all. So that was a little bit shocking. When I thought it was just an arrhythmia, it seemed like just an electrical problem in the heart that I could probably fix pretty easily, but it turned out there was something much more serious going on in my heart. Ultimately, we connected it to having lived at very high altitude for 25 years, which caused a lot of stress on my lungs as well as my heart, and led to this gradually increasing, worsening problem, looking back probably over the last 10 years. So anyway, it became clear the altitude was not good for me. Every time I went back, I got much, much sicker. My body kind of decompensated, and I had to leave immediately and come back to sea level. So once we got all these diagnoses put together and talked to a high altitude cardiologist, I found out that I needed to stay at sea level, because that gives me the best possibility of correcting some of the problems by remaining at sea level, not ever going back to that high altitude again, which meant that I was effectively displaced from my home. There was not a chance to say goodbye, to pack up any of my things, to leave it in a heartfelt, gradual way. I literally kind of ran to the car and drove away to get to lower altitude as quickly as possible. And so I haven't been back there since, for 9 months now. So that alone created its own grief process for me and a major life change to cope with. But because I felt better having come to sea level, that made it much easier to tolerate. So here I am. I'm at sea level now, and over the 9 months, I've been feeling better and better. But I just wanted to share a little bit about what I'm doing, because it's been really powerful, and I actually feel like I've transformed in so many ways as a result of having a heart problem that forced me to actually do some of this work, some inner and outer work on myself. So one of the first things that I did, as I said, I did not like the term congestive heart failure. I felt like that's a setup. That is a setup to look negatively at everything that's happened and to walk around thinking my heart is failing me. The energy around that was just so depressing and discouraging and negative that I decided to think of it as I have an expanded heart. One of the chambers of my heart is expanded. It's just bigger. And so it's not functioning as well as it should because it's expanded. And something really interesting happened as soon as I decided to use that term and started thinking in my own head, oh, it's my expanded heart. That's why this is happening. I was listening to a podcast one day, and it's a podcast about the mystics that's actually reviewing mystical wisdom texts from the past, which I love and I've gotten really excited about. And a verse, I'm trying to find it here, a verse was read from Teresa of Avila. And Teresa said, if I can find it, I have a whole journal for my heart now. Teresa said, "The soul is filled with a peace so deep that it feels as if the heart were being widened, stretched open by love to receive more than it ever thought it could hold." So as soon as I embrace this idea of having an expanded heart, I get this verse from Teresa of Avila talking about the very fact that as you grow spiritually, it's as if the heart is being expanded in order to hold more love. That was an image I could live with. That was an image I could feel okay about. Like, oh, my heart's expanded. It can hold more love now, rather than using that word failure. So one of the things I did was just reframe in my own mind what's happening here without being in total denial about the physical process that's going on, to acknowledge that it's enlarged, but to think of it the spiritual energy behind that, and how I am now able to hold more love. My heart is expanded. So that was turning something very negative and discouraging into a more positive terminology that feels better when I talk about it to myself and contemplate it. And then I started doing some very significant somatic work. And because it was clear to me, for one thing, the heart holds grief and the lungs as well. It gets stored there when we haven't processed it fully. The heart also holds guilt. And so I already knew from recently having gone through that trip to Italy that there was still a huge amount of grief and guilt around my father's suicide death that I've been carrying with me for years in my heart, that I just had not been able to fully release or fully process over all this time. So I knew there was deep work that I needed to do. So I started a little routine in the mornings of getting up very early. I would do some stretching and yoga. Then I would write in my journal, and I would specifically focus on my heart, on grief, guilt, anger, resentment, whatever seemed to be stored in my heart, whatever was coming up that day. I would write letters to myself, letters to my heart, letters to myself as a child. I wrote letters to my parents and my brother. And what began to come to the surface is a lot of anger. And so then I knew, okay, I've got to get the anger out of my body by doing something physical. Just writing about it isn't going to take care of that. So I remembered that I used to do Taibo years and years ago, which is like a boxing training in a way, where you actually punch the air and kick. And so I started doing a little routine of that after I would journal. And amazingly, like every time I would start punching the air, I would burst into tears. And so I knew, like, wow, this is so powerful. This is like releasing so much of this pain that's been stored for such a long time. And so again, the journaling, writing letters, surfacing whatever pain was there, doing boxing. I also did dancing. That was another good way to release it. And more yoga. I found really good somatic yoga videos on YouTube that I started doing that were really helpful for releasing a lot of emotion from the body. Many times the yoga was a more gentle release, and I would use the boxing when there was a lot of anger there that needed to be released in a big way. But it was powerful, and I felt a difference from that right away. It would change my whole day. After I would do that little routine in the morning, suddenly I felt so much clearer. I felt stronger. I felt healthier. I just felt better in general. And so in addition to all of that, I was also doing my usual walking and trying to eat a really healthy diet. And as we look at diet, I'll tell you another thing is becoming aware that sodium is very bad for congestive heart failure because of the fluid imbalances that you can develop. But then also learning it's actually bad for everyone to have a diet that's overloaded in sodium. As I started investigating, how much sodium do I have in my diet? That won't be hard. I can cut out a few things. But I have found it to be extremely hard because so many of the foods that we're accustomed to eating have sodium added as a preservative or a canning agent, and I don't buy anything that's been processed that has that much sodium in it. But there's sodium in everything, basically. A lot of sodium hidden in bread, in salad dressings. I've let go of all of those. I hardly eat them anymore because the sodium content is just too high for one day. And even, eggs and vegetables have some sodium. So I have had to really narrow my diet down and mostly cook at home in order to stay on the low sodium diet that I need to be on. But I also feel amazing, and I feel so much better from removing some of the sodium that I used to eat before. And I wasn't crazy with sodium in the past. I never even added salt to my food. I didn't really cook with salt. It was just, I was getting more salt in foods I was eating on a regular basis than I realized I was getting. I just didn't know. I didn't know that cheese and cottage cheese are really high in salt, that most dairy products are high in salt. Yogurt is better, and ricotta cheese is better than the other dairy products. I didn't know that. So I was consuming things that had hidden sodium and that I wasn't aware of until I started reading all the labels, adding everything up, and figuring out where I could make changes. And now that I've dialed things in and I'm able to eat a lower sodium diet at home, it's made a huge difference in how I feel. It completely shifted the fluid balance, so I'm not retaining fluid now. Not to go into that, but it made a huge difference for me. And I'm looking around and thinking, wow, the average American, I found out, eats more than twice as much the maximum recommended amount of sodium that we're supposed to have in our diet per day. And most people have no idea that they're eating more sodium than they should be, because I said it's hidden in so many foods. And unless you read every label and ask at every bakery and everywhere you go, you're not really aware of the sodium that's there. So I'm on a little bit of a campaign to make sure people know about sodium, because the incidence of high blood pressure in our country is so very high. And I honestly think the sodium in our diets is probably part of that. And I discovered when I keep my sodium under a certain amount, I get fewer headaches, less brain fog. It really makes a difference in how I feel overall in my body. So I see the value of it. But here's where the biggest problem lies. It's eating in restaurants, because the average restaurant meal contains more sodium than the daily allowance, one meal at a restaurant. And so I have found over the last 9 months, if there's a time when we have visitors and we're eating at restaurants more often, I will get sick and decompensate from eating too much sodium. I mean, until I got really smart about how to order food at restaurants. Restaurants are dangerous. You have to be able to take matters in your own hands and negotiate and ask for different preparations and to have things left off, and basically change things up to make it healthy for you. But I don't think it needs to be this way. I'm kind of on a campaign to say, why do we have gluten-free portions on menus? We now also have low-carb sections on a lot of menus in a lot of restaurants. Why do we not also have low sodium items indicated in restaurants? And it's partly because of just a lack of education, a lack of public will, a lack of people asking for lower sodium. And literally every single grocery store should have an entire aisle of low sodium foods. We should be able to have choices to eat foods with less salt if we want to, and we're not taking away anything from people who want salt and who are happy with it and fine, don't care. So I'm on a little bit of a campaign. I just wanted to say that here on the podcast, and think about it. Think about how much sodium you have in your diet, and maybe you could benefit by cutting down too. I have a friend who recently cut down sodium and now doesn't need blood pressure medication anymore. And so, it's something we need to do to be healthier, but we need to change the thinking in our society around it, because it would help everyone be healthier if we had access to lower sodium foods. So anyway, I'll get off of that topic. I just wanted to mention it because it's near and dear to my heart, shall we say, pun intended, right now. And one thing I am proposing, just like we have Meatless Monday, when people are encouraged on Mondays to try a vegetarian meal and not have meat, what if we have Salt-Free Sunday, where for one day a week, everyone decides, I'm going to pay attention to how much sodium I get and try to stick with, for on some tables, the recommended amount is 1,500 milligrams a day. And on others, there's a little more leeway up to 2,000 milligrams a day. So just keep that in mind. You can use the 2,000 as your benchmark and then see where you are. How much are you consuming in a day? So I just recommend it, and maybe one day a week to see what it's like if you cut down on sodium. So in dealing with the emotional and spiritual aspects of having a heart condition, one thing that I have really spent a lot of time working on is fear, because I realize that fear is actually one of the unhealthiest emotions that we can have. It hampers the immune system from functioning. It's bad for our nervous system. And yet, when you receive a diagnosis of something serious going on in your body, fear is a normal response. And when part of the condition is to have trouble breathing, that also leads to fear and anxiety developing. And so I spent a lot of time working on fear. And one of the reasons that I minimize going to medical appointments and seeing doctors is because it's so clear to me how our medical system operates utilizing fear. Fear is the major motivator for getting patients to have tests done, take medications, and basically follow the doctor's advice and come in for appointments. And it was obvious to me that when I was in the office, I could so easily get pushed into this fear state because of the words the doctor would use and the way things were being presented to me. And I did not want to be in a state of fear. And so I would have to come home and process. And, I'm lucky. I have medical training myself. So I knew how to reinterpret what was being said and remove the fear from it and actually look for the positivity in it. And what I discovered when I started doing my own research is that conditions like mine that are related to living at high altitude can actually be improved by living at sea level for 2 years. And so that gave me tremendous hope, and also a reason to say, I am going to keep doing what I'm doing for 2 years and stay at sea level and give my heart the very best chance it has of improving. And if it does, wonderful. If it doesn't, that's also okay, because during these 2 years while I'm here at sea level, I'm feeling better and better. I'm stronger and stronger. And so strong enough that I'm doing this podcast, also strong enough that I just wrote a book. I just wrote the book about the trip to Italy that I did the podcast episodes on a year and a half ago. And so I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I know it's working on some level or another in some way, and I'm feeling better, and I have quality of life, and I'm able to do the things I want to do, and I have energy now and vitality that was missing for me before. So whatever I'm doing, it's working and it's helping me. So I'm on the 2-year plan, basically staying out of altitude, giving my heart and lungs the very best possible chance of improving it all. And as part of my spiritual walk here, overcoming fear is one part of it, but also surrendering to whatever happens and allowing what is to just be there. And if my heart never improves, if my heart keeps deteriorating and declining, and I'm on a trajectory toward the end of my life, that's okay. I'm in a place of equanimity where I can live with whatever happens, because if I cling too hard to trying to make my heart better, then I'm setting myself up again for the idea of failure and for more fear to enter into the picture. So I'm working on staying in this state of surrender. Whatever happens, happens. I'm just going to do the things that help me feel better in the moment right now. I'm going to work on staying in the moment and staying present and enjoying every part of my life as much as possible right now. And so that is really powerful. That's making a huge difference for me, staying in the present moment, surrendering. but also working on, as I said, I have a heart journal. I work on forgiveness a lot because as old anger has come up, old scenes of betrayal and abandonment and hurt from the past that I had just buried away and expected would never heal. I've been able to work on those, and I've been able to make progress and to actually do a huge amount of healing within myself. So I'm doing these practices. I learned that I have to stop judging myself, and that one of the worst things that I felt at the very beginning was self-blame for having this condition in the first place. I was really angry at myself, first of all, for not listening to my body sooner, but I was really mad at my body for developing a problem. I was offended that my body, my heart, would betray me in this way by getting sick. And so I've had to do a lot of work on self-judgment around being sick and having a diagnosis. So those are just some of the things that I've learned: the fear, the self-judgment, the need to surrender. And all of that is working really well for me. And as I said, I've been able to write the book that I've wanted to write for a number of years about the grief trip to Italy. And as I've written that book, I've also done so much more healing, because writing the book unearthed a lot of old grief and guilt that was really stuck inside of me, and I've been able to work through that as well. So all of these things that I've been able to work on in the last 9 months have really helped and really made a difference. And that's why I restarted this podcast, because for one thing, I have the energy and the vitality now to do it. And I remembered how much I enjoyed it in the past. And because I really want my focus now to be on this spiritual aspect of life. For a long time, it's been part of my focus in the background. I wrote this 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying, which was a book all about spiritual lessons. And those are the same spiritual lessons I'm reliving and working through right now in this process. And so my heart is telling me, do this podcast, talk about the spiritual path and the spiritual process, and just be real and open about it. And so for now, I'm continuing End of Life University as well. I might make adjustments in the schedules in order to accommodate having 2 podcasts again, because I don't want to go back to the place where I'm overworked and overtired. I know I need to have a better balance in my life than I used to have. So I'm working on that, trying to get to that place. Though I am a really hard worker, so I love to work. I enjoy it. So I have to actually pull myself away and remind myself to slow down a little bit. But my intention is to keep this What Really Matters podcast going and make adjustments in End of Life University so that I can do both. And I've written the book. I'm going to be publishing it in the fall. I'm going to do a Kickstarter campaign to get that book finished in terms of the final publishing that will start in September. And I'll tell you more about that as I get closer to that. And I now have a new blog also on Substack called Soul Code. And there I'm sharing a lot of essays about how I'm working with AI. And on a lot of these healing modalities that I've done, I've actually used AI to help me find information, to give me ideas, to help me learn more about somatic therapy and some of the things that I've needed, and to help me create forgiveness practices and breathing exercises and all the things that I've needed to do. I've utilized AI to help me in all those areas, and that's been amazing as well. So I write a lot about AI in the Soul Code Substack if you'd like to read any of those blogs. So this is what I have going on now, a lot suddenly. But like I said, my energy level's good. I'm feeling so much better. And I'm empowered and I'm ready to do this. So if you listen to this episode, which many people may not, I appreciate it that you're here. And if you're still here, thank you. I have on my Patreon page a brand new tier level there called Soul Supporter, SOUL, Soul Supporter, which is a special tier set aside just for people who are interested in more spiritual content that I talk about. And I will give special bonuses to the people in that tier, what that means is other people can sign up at different levels who are not interested in spiritual content, who only want to hear about death and dying. But if you like the spiritual content, you could join the Patreon community and become a soul supporter, and you'll get bonuses there specifically targeted around spirituality. So that's another new thing that I have going on right now. Lots of fun and interesting things happening. So I would just want to thank you once again for rejoining me here and listening. And I'm excited to be back doing the podcast. And I'll see you. I'm planning to drop the next couple of episodes fairly soon after this one. So maybe you didn't even listen to this one, which is fine, because nobody really needs to know all of this information anyway. But if you did, and if you have any sort of health condition going on, I hope I can provide some inspiration and maybe some support for you as well, because it can be a lonely journey. And I don't want to see anyone be left only with the medical profession as their source of support, because, as I said, it's really fear-based, and none of us need more fear in our lives right now. We need more love in our lives. So I will say goodbye right now, and I'll use my old sign out to remember that we're here for love. So face your fear, be ready for whatever life brings you next, and love every single moment that you get to be here. Bye-bye.